Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so many of you today, and thank you so much for joining this afternoon's Global Design Forum session, MinaLima, Telling Stories Through Design. My name is Hannah Barber. I'm the Head of Partnerships for the London Design Festival, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to introduce Miraphora Mina and Eduardo Lima to this virtual stage today. Miraphora and Eduardo joined forces in 2001 to create the graphic universe of the much-loved Harry Potter film series for Warner Brother Films. So in 2009, they founded MinaLima, the design studio and wizards behind the graphic universe of the Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts films. They have designed all the graphic elements for the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Diagon Alley, and Universal Orlando Resort, as well as creating award-winning publications and marketing materials for the franchise. In 2015, the studio entered a new adventure of imagining for the wizarding world, designing the graphic props for the recent film series Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The studio has also created graphic props for films such as Sweeney Todd, The Golden Compass, and The Imitation Game. They also conceived and illustrated the best-selling MinaLima Classic series for HarperCollins. They've brought so much joy and magic to our lives through the stories and films we all know and love, and today they will be telling us more about how their journey started. They will delve into the world of graphic designers working on films, other elements of the Wizarding World franchise, the Fantastic Beasts film series, as well as other films and global brands that they work on, book illustrations, exhibition design, and also their most recent endeavor, their new House of MinaLima, a gallery and store in the heart of Soho, and where you have the chance to step inside the visual world of wizardry, sure to inspire not just Harry Potter fans, but also graphic design enthusiasts. So, who better to host a talk about telling stories through design than MinaLima? I hope you enjoy today's talk. So, Miraphora and Eduardo, over to you.
Thanks for inviting us to this. It's going to be a little, we'll try and keep it personal whilst still being in two completely different locations. Eduardo and I are working separately today.
First of all, now a big thank you again for the London Design Festival to having us back and be on the first day, and with Pentagram starting and us closing today. So we feel very honored. Yes, and thank you so much, London Design Festival, for having us back.
It's quite strange to even as I mean, we're called graphic designers, but of course a lot of designers will feel that their reach can be, or sometimes is, required to be a bit broader than the label that they're given. And it seems quite strange that nearly 20 years has already passed working together as a team, Eduardo and I, and quite a few more years on top of that before we got to meet each other. But it seems to have gone in a flash, and here we are, sort of in compromised and strange circumstances, but still, of course, able to exercise our what we've been trained to do and what we love doing, because something little like a pandemic hasn't seemed to have stopped creative people continuing in their craft. So great to have a platform as well to share it with people around the world today.
Mira, I think we like to think now for the creative people, especially in conditions that we are living now, creativity and design can even be much more, I don't know, explored and enhanced. So let's take this opportunity as well, now to hopefully change the world in any capacity we can.
Yes, it doesn't mean that we're trying to make statements about it, but it certainly focuses the mind in terms of the projects that you're on, having to just keep the momentum going. We talk a lot about momentum, about having to, if you've already having ideas or even been given a commission, there's something as basic as that you need to just keep going to respond to those demands that are put on you. But certainly it has, I think, kept us sane and also connected, of course, because graphic design anyway, or the arts, is about communication. And I think it's been so testing the last 6 months working separately, and it's given us an opportunity as a studio to stay connected, stay communicating, and having a conduit, which is design, for us to share our ideas and not be thwarted by the fact that you have to do it by sharing a screen or sharing a telephone call. It's really interesting that I think, and I'm sure that a lot of other designers who are watching or who have experienced this as well, that it's wonderful to have a language that we share, that we can that can keep us kind of going and moving through this difficult time. And actually in that time we also moved our studio and our shop and gallery into a new location, so that gave us a kind of incentive and inspiration and sort of opportunity to reinvent perhaps how we work and who we are and how we can plant ourselves in a kind of creative situation. So I think, having had that, Eduardo is actually in the new studio right now, so it is great to have. I think people shouldn't switch off their opportunities because the circumstances have changed. I think that's kind of what I wanted.
And we are talking to our designers now, our amazing team, working from home for the last 6 months has been quite hard. But as you said, we have just keep going. And they came to visit us this week, and they are all kind of dying to be together in the same place. Because as you know, guys, creative people, you need sometimes to be close to each other and making a mess and cutting paper, painting, sketching. And sometimes that's really hard with digital, but we managed, Mira, to survive those 6 months, and hopefully everything's gonna get better, and we're all gonna go back to a normal place, hopefully soon. But Mira, next year, 2021 is gonna be a very special year for us, because it's gonna be 20 years that we have been working together. Well, in this life, because we're always like. We always like to joke that we know each other for several generations before this life we're living now. And but can you tell me, how did you start? Because you are not really a graphic designer. Did you start graphic design? What did you do? How did you arrive there?
I'm not a big fan of the label, apart from making them for films. But I'm not a big fan of the label, just because I think when you do start designing, it's important to be broad in your thinking anyway, because you might need to apply your thinking to 3D or to 2D or to moving image, so it's been quite useful having had my training in theatre design, so set design for theatre, and then followed by set design for film. So really I was kind of heading more towards working in 3D and spatial design for theatre and film. And so there was no, as you said, there was no conventional, traditional training that I had in graphic design. But I suppose through those mediums, I was already having to think about detail, or perhaps I was attracted to detail, and thinking about how form can work together in a space. Because if you've got a stage or a room or a proscenium that you have to work within, then of course that's not that different from thinking about how you might fit a design into a book cover, and how all the things relate. So having done a training in set design, it was only through working in film and getting so drawn into the detail that that I kind of by accident fell into becoming a graphic designer for film. And I'd say now that perhaps those experiences in working in or training in set design were very useful in our thinking now, and certainly designing and actually making a gallery and shop space come to life was definitely sort of informed by perhaps some of those experiences. And of course, during the time, those 25 years or something of working in set design and then eventually in graphic design, working with some really fantastic designers like Stuart Craig, has taught, teaches you every day about your approach to design and how you might bring those things back to your own marks that you're going to make. Meanwhile, back in Brazil,
did you enchant like a parrot to send me a letter, no, a Hogwarts letter to come and join you? I am from Brazil. I studied in Rio graphic. I studied visual communications with a specialization in graphic design. And but my dream was always to work in films. Since I was a little kid, I was always dreaming of working in films. And I did graphic design, not really knowing that there was a role in films for graphic designers. But my way to arrive in films was a little bit strange as well, because while I was studying graphic design, I started working in films, but in editing. That was an amazing learning experience for filmmaking, because in editing you learn everything. You learn everything about the film. About the set, about lighting, about music, about direction, and so it's a brilliant experience to be done that. And was only when I moved to the UK, when I got the letter from Mira, that I started working in films, doing graphic design, and I feel so fortunate and so grateful that my first film as a graphic designer was on Harry Potter. And when I moved to the UK, I didn't know anything about Harry Potter. I didn't know anything about the books, and so I had to catch up. And of course, I got into the books, to that amazing world that was created, and we feel we are so happy as well to be part of the creation of this incredible wizarding world. Yeah.
To be honest, I think what you just said about not knowing anything about the material that you're working with was actually symptomatic of most people working on that film series, because it didn't have the legacy and the roots that it does now, and so strange as it may seem to some of the younger viewers of this, in 2000, 2001, 2002, we were all just kind of doing our best for a couple of books that had a good leadership amongst children, but it certainly didn't have the broad impact that it does now. So in a funny way, and I think naivety sometimes in leaping into projects actually really assists you. Perhaps the fact that it wasn't so scrutinized and followed by a huge readership and viewership gave everyone working on the film that rawness that you could jump into a project and just do your best for the story. And that's something that then really has been at the core of what MinaLima became, was having storytelling at the core.
But I do remember Mira very well when I arrived in this country, and I absolutely fall in love with London and the UK and the culture. And but I remember the first day I went to Livingston Studios, the Warner Brothers studio in Livingston, and meeting you and Stephanie McMillan. Stephanie McMillan was the set decorator on all the Harry Potter films, and she was such like Stuart Craig, the production design. She was such like an inspiration. She was such a beautiful woman that was so kind, and she taught us a lot, Mira, about style, about design, about good taste, and it was an amazing be able to be working with her. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago, but she left us, Mira, with lots of good memories and good lessons as well in filmmaking and in design. But I remember when I arrived in 2001, and I went to see you, Mira, and you were saying that graphic design for film was quite a new role, And I remember you told me that there were maybe like 4 or 5 graphic designers doing films at that time. And luckily now the productions are gotten much bigger and much more demanding. And in every single film now, there will be always a graphic designer or a graphics department. For example, now in Fantastic Beasts, when we were working just before the lockdown, we had a group of 4 assistants, 1 coordinator, plus me and Mira. So now the productions really take seriously the importance of graphic design done by graphic designers, because you needed to have a very good knowledge of typeface, and you need to learn and understand the typeface that were used in different periods in different countries. So yes, so there is the need of people that really understand that role, and that has been incredible because now there are over 325 graphic designers working in the film, TV, and now of course with Netflix and Apple TV and Amazon is creating even more opportunities for graphic design. And the good thing that the productions are really giving the right value for graphic design. Is not like something that you buy in the shop or something. You have to go and create it and then understand. So it has been incredible.
From an industry point of view, I'd say it's very it's kind of up and running, and there's a dynamic to it. But I think from an education and training perspective, it's perhaps the balance hasn't happened yet, because we are getting a lot of questions about how to get into it, and the people that we meet, the younger generation of students and new graduates aren't quite knowing the opportunity or what the opportunities are and how to make that transition from college. So what we'd love to see in the future is this being taught even as a module or as a element of a graphic design course or an illustration course, because it doesn't necessarily, as I have proved, need to come from those kind of courses, but it's the most logical way to show students and young people that that is one of the paths they might follow in graphic design, because graphic design, after all, is quite a broad spectrum and covers so many different types of design. So that would be definitely, I think, something that needs to be considered in terms of education.
Is one of our dreams, not to be able to teach and to go to universities and give more seminars. But unfortunately, no, it's the time. No, we cannot find time to do that. But we want in the near future even to start doing our own workshops and to kind of give an introduction to film and through graphic design. So yes. So I think you need not to be specific. Yeah, as Mira said, it needs to be more. We need to talk more about it and to make sure that people have opportunities to go.
Eduardo, in the meantime, while we're here and do have a tiny audience, perhaps to speak to, perhaps we can just give a little outline of what that role actually is, because of course people know, because perhaps when they've been to see a film, they might not realize the spectrum of pieces that have been designed by, and when I say design, sometimes it might be quite a mundane thing. It might be a menu. The pieces in a film that fall under the responsibility of a graphic designer or graphic design team can range from background elements. So if where I'm sitting was a set, probably all the books would have to be, if it's a period film, they would all have to be designed, and perhaps if I pick up a book in the scene, that would have to be designed. If I sent a letter, menus, labels, and then it can go right the other end.
Say that thing now. Every single film we worked maybe combined in more than 45 films maybe, and every single film, we had to design labels, letter, and a menu. There was one.
They always crop up in every story, but I guess they are in life, and that's basically what a graphic designer is doing, is trying to always replicate life, whether it's today or whether it was in 1850 or medieval times, or perhaps a fictional future. But all the time you're trying to dip into what would be relevant in that world at that moment to enhance the story to a point where the audience doesn't have to think about it. They just accept that that label or that menu is part of that world of the character. But it can also extend to street graphics, which we've had to encounter quite a lot. So it might be signage, tax disc for a car, number plates on cars and vehicles. It might be tapestry designs. There's one right behind you, Eduardo, I can see there. And it might be floor designs, patterns. So it's really from typography to applied pattern to fine detailed work on paper, I'd say. Quite often paper is our medium, but that can extend to parchment. It could be constructed into 3 dimensions. So thinking in 3 dimensions is really important. And I think if you're an illustrator wanting to get into film, actually thinking in 3D is as an important part of, and that doesn't mean you need to be able to design a car, but perhaps you might be curious about how 3-dimensional objects have come to life, what are their forms, and quite a lot of logic behind that. But central to all of these things, I think, is in terms of working in graphic design for film, is being true to the story that's being told. And obviously that's much easier for a designer or anyone on the film if the story is strong and is clear to the viewer as to what the characters and the motivations are. And for us, we were blessed really with Harry Potter, because all of that was so clearly defined and laid out, and everybody understood who the characters were and what they wanted, and it's our job to deliver, to enhance their personality with these objects, things that you perhaps wouldn't take for granted when you watch a film.
But Mira, and the good thing as well to talk a little bit is how the structure of an art department in the film is. For example, in Harry Potter, of course, Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, they are massive, huge films. So there is a very big crew. On Harry Potter, the art department was, I think there were more than 60 to 70 people, from set decorators to draftsmen to concept artists to art directors, and the graphics department is kind of in the middle of the art department and the set decorating department, because we have to work very close with both parts of the art department. With the art department, usually it's more like signage and floor designs and murals and things like that. And for the set decorating is what Mira said. If the Mira, where Mira is now, if that was a set, we would have to design all those things. So that would be much more closer with the set decorating team. And of course, all the hero props, the action props, the props that the actors interact with. For example, in Harry Potter, the Daily Prophet, the Marauder's Map, all the school books, those are kind of our main responsibility. Like those kind of props is the graphic department that needs to come up with the concept and go with, and of course have a conversation with the director to see if it fits the story. And but yes, but it can be, the art departments can be very an amazing place to be, because again, you have so much talented people with so many different areas that they are yeah, so especially in films, the art departments are incredible.
And another really kind of interesting and compelling bit of our job of any graphic designer for film, and actually I guess it is for any designer, is the part that requires the bit before you make a mark on the paper, which is the research. And of course, we can't be the master of everything. We need sometimes, if you're designing 100 pieces for a film, you might have to dip in and out in a quite surface way. But it's certainly an opportunity to really explore the things that are going to inspire your designs. And actually, that's kind of a good segue into a really nice question that we had from Eva Wijaya regarding references and choices about how to make those, which direction to go in when you're making a decision. So I'm going to read his question. I am curious about the design process. When I see their work, I notice some references are taken from graphic design pieces throughout history. How do they choose what piece is suitable as a starting point? I realize that the design has to serve the story, but I do believe there are more than one creative solution available for each graphic prop. How do they make the creative decision? That's a really good question, because of course, anything that's created from nothing, there's several solutions, and of course, if you hope you get it right, then it feels right. And Eduardo and I often talk about the feeling of something as a solution, especially for a fictional world. If it's obviously you're recreating a historical situation or a moment in time, you need to be absolutely.
Like we've done at the Imitation Game. We had to be very loyal to the story, to the period, and what really happened, and we had lots of references, so that we could not change. But yes.
But I think Evan is referring to Harry Potter, and how, although it was set in the present day, we kind of dipped into different periods in time to inform different bits of the story, because it actually, if you look across the 8 films, there are references to 50s design, there are references to Victorian and medieval and 1970s, and some of it is sophisticated and some of it's quite naive. And I think, in answer to his question, it's really about doing some research for that moment in the story. And once you've narrowed down a few inspirational trigger pieces, whether it's a typography style or the construction of a particular bit of origami, or whether it's a medieval document that has a particular handwriting or seal on it, if once you found these kind of keys, we want to call them visual keys that take you in, then you can shift it into our own interpretation of that world. But it's never ever, it should never be indulgent to us as designers. It should always be what we think serves best the story. Behind you, Eduardo, is a poster for a Quidditch World Cup. So it felt that it needed to be really, we needed to look at the Olympic Games posters, for example, across from, over decades, to see what sort of keys they were using to communicate to a very big audience and to try and attract an audience. Because some of the time we're creating props that are to attract lots of people, which is what branding does. And sometimes it's just about a very personal moment for a single character. It might be their handwriting, for example. So it's, when it is about a single character, then it's about really understanding from the text, from the story, always centrally, what that character is trying to do in his journey or her journey through the story, and understanding their personality, their characteristics, and how you can translate that into a visual mark on a piece of paper or on an envelope or on a newspaper. With the newspapers, for example, that Eduardo got heavily involved in for the films, I don't know if you can see. We again, it's there's plenty of liberty in a fictional wizarding world to go whichever way you want to, but I think the starting point must be a reality, and it must be about communication, because graphic design is about communicating, whether it's a message or, as we said, a branding exercise to actually get people to buy your product, whether it's a branding of an institution. There's many times a graphic designer for film will have to think about creating an identity for a school or an institution or a company or a shop, and all of those things must be resolved.
I remember someone coming to us and asking us to do a commission, like, to do like a branding design, and we said to that person, I can't remember, we said that we were not brand designers, and so she reminded us, but you did the branding of the Minutes of Magic, of the Daily Prophet, of all the shops in Diagon Alley, so you are branding designer.
I still wouldn't think that we are. I suppose good branding is also about storytelling, and you know, whether it's a fictional, a new brand that needs to create a story for itself, or whether it is a brand that has a legacy that needs to be told or given some new energy. So our work is I suppose very close to the way conventional graphic designers in the real world might need to communicate their brands or their products, their stories, and that's what made it so interesting for us to then sort of transition into designing for our own books, which we can come to in a minute. Actually, also a good segue, sorry, into another question I think that's there. Sorry, Eduardo.
No, but to just finish that point, like as you said, the research is such like important part of any job, especially creative. And we have a very big now library, and again, we buy books about any subject. You never know when you're gonna need it. And I had an example this week. We are working on a project that I have a book that the title of the book was exactly what I needed, and so you never know when you're gonna use that book.
But when you bought that book, you didn't know that there was.
No, exactly. And now that book was special, and so you never know when you're gonna use that book about, I don't know, manhole designs in India. And I remember, like,
book, by the way.
and I think it was last year that we went to Japan for the first time, and you can imagine, you guys, that we were absolutely, I don't know, gobsmacked with the place, and we could not stop looking and taking pictures. And all the guys that were trying to take us to one meeting to another, it was a nightmare because we were stopping every single minute to take pictures. And again, we keep collecting now all those stuff and go somewhere in our brain that when we need it, we can access that file that is hidden.
That's the difficult bit.
But before, even with the research and with lots of preparation to design a new piece, there's always that we still have now that moment that you are in front of the white screen or the white piece of paper and nothing really happens. No?
Yeah. I think I hope that there are other designers watching who might be our age or older that that know this pain, where it just, and it's not just designers, I'm sure writers and musicians and painters and any creative field, it just it's sort of haunting the white page staring at you. Maybe we need to change the color of the page, Eduardo. That's what we need to do.
Said, Mira, that was very good. You said, like, the only thing that we need to remember that we already been there hundreds, thousands of times, and we always manage to populate that white screen now. So
yeah, that's the reassuring sort of voice that's sort of patting you on the back, going, yeah, it's going to be okay because you got through it last time, so we'll find a way. And goes back to what we were saying before about the question of finding these keys that can give you, because we're not creating fine art, we're creating communication art. So it's about referencing relevant motifs and voices that can speak to the audience, whichever audience it is at that moment. And I don't mean necessarily the audience going to the cinema. I mean the characters in your stories. You know, if we're designing Alice in Wonderland's world, we need to be thinking about what Alice is going to be looking at, not what the reader is looking at. We need to just get into the head of Geppetto when he's making Pinocchio. So those things really, I think, help designers to unravel what the solutions are for the story visually. Someone did actually ask that sort of question. I think it was, I hope I pronounced this, Niraja Sundar asks, she would love to know how to make storytelling tangible, which is a great question. In most cases today, there is a disconnect between the story and the product, which is merely used as a set property. How do we make the product the protagonist instead? And I kind of, when I read that question, I was thinking, I don't really know, because I guess we just try to do our best. As I said at the beginning, if we have a good, strong story to work with, then of course that helps. If you have a strong brand and you're a branding designer, if your brief is solid and your client or your story is clear about what they want, I think that does help drive the process of design, so that there's not any confusion about what it is you're trying to say. The other thing that perhaps is in answer to that question, Eduardo, is that I don't know if it's just because we're too busy or maybe too arrogant, but we very rarely kind of look at what's in, like, not necessarily in fashion, but kind of what's the thing to do now. So I think when we designed the classics, which are all nicely lined up behind you, I have one here, I don't think we ever stopped to think, well, what's right for, or how have fairy tales, how should they be taught, how have they been told to date? I think central to our thinking was how do we want to tell that story, and how do we want to make this item, this object, something that is treasured and in your hand. And I hope that speaks to what Niraja is saying about how do we make the product the protagonist. And certainly with the first one that we did with Peter Pan, and we kind of had a joke that we'd do 12, but we obviously didn't get too distracted with that and focused on this one.
Well, we are number 8 already. We already have 7 published. One more.
Be careful what you wish for, yeah. But with this one, we certainly thought, and I'm sure that this kind of ethos came from our experience in working in film without realizing. We thought, well, what would a book be like if it was actually in Wendy's bedroom? Not what would it be like on the shelf of a bookshop in, say, in Waterstones or something, but what would her book about Peter Pan be like? So it's kind of a world within it's kind of cyclical. So thinking in that way informs how you think about every single surface of the book. So it's not just what are the page numbers like, what are the title, the chapter openers like, but what color is the background of the page, what's the end paper going to be, so that when someone experiences this, it is the protagonist. So that, I think that was a really nice springboard for us to then develop the whole series. And again, going back to the keys, the visual keys, that kind of gave us a key into to the first one and the last one, having a kind of synergy and a language across them that was a family. So the family are 8 now.
We're just finishing The Wizard of Oz that's coming out next year. When Mira, do you remember when we finished Harry Potter in 2009, and when we set up MinaLima as a studio? And a very good friend of ours that he works in publishing, he said to us, as a good piece of advice, do not do books, do not design books. Books are lovely, but they are time consuming, and sometimes the financials are not great. And we completely ignore him, no, because our passion for books are so not just the passion to collect books and to have an amazing library, but the passion for this object with the paper and the smell and the ink, and so we completely ignore and rebelled, and we carry on. And now I think we are film designers, but we are also now book designers as well now, and that is our passion. And of course, now, can we show this one? So
yes, it's kind of come full circle, because having done the classics allowed us to call ourselves book designers, which I think we probably weren't when we were working on the films. We were designing prop books, so we might make one or two for the film, but they were fake. Everything in the film, of course, is fake. So having gone through the experience of actually having to design and make...
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to get one book. I have one prop here. Just one second.
Okay. So I think now having done them as fake books for films, it's kind of given us and here is a fake book for a film, which looks real, but of course inside it doesn't have any real pages, or at least not.
I think okay. One have 1 or 2 pages. But...
1 or 2 pages, yeah. So, but that's actually been an interesting kind of bounce for us as a studio, because as you said, we finished in 2009 on the films, kind of bounced into becoming book designers and illustrators as a studio with a team, and it feels like that rhythm doesn't necessarily need to stop with the medium of book design and publishing, because now that there is a body of work in these books, there is no reason to then expand that into something else. Maybe it's the moving image, maybe it's exhibition design, and I think as a design studio, that's absolutely fundamental to have your identity as, you know, so that you're clear to your customers what you do. But I would hate to think that our world would just stop at graphic design, because it's so interesting to expand and have opportunities to move into 3D design or into spatial design, and actually since we set up a kind of satellite studio with partners and old friends in LA, and this is a very recent thing, we're hoping that will then give us the opportunity to expand some of these ideas and creative directions into other fields. So it's all about having the idea as strong enough so that you can then apply it to different media.
But of course, Naomi, up to now, we have been illustrating or creating or enhancing worlds that have already been invented by someone else. So the ultimate dream is for MinaLima to start telling our own stories as well. So that is what we are trying to...
We need a few days off to do that.
Yeah, we need a couple of years off to go and do that. But that is the ultimate dream, is for us to be able to tell our own stories as well. So again, watch this space.
But I think having the studio has completely sort of transformed the way, because Eduardo and I were started as freelance designers, and for the whole duration of those 9 years on Harry Potter, we were working absolutely intensely as a partnership, but as two individuals, individual employees. And setting up the studio has been a real vision in terms of just expanding what projects we can bring in and how we can share them with other brilliant minds. So certainly we don't want this damn pandemic to get to kind of hinder that progress, but certainly that was the direction that we were moving in before we had to sort of minimize a little bit our scope of work. But having that a physical building and a place where we can attract great designers and collaborators to unravel some of these ideas has been great. And of course, having our little shop and gallery in the same building. There's an absolute energy now in this one mad place that really was a dream, wasn't it, Eduardo, to sort of have MinaLima Towers.
Of course, and even like illustrate a little bit the importance of research. We asked a friend of us that she was amazing research on all the Harry Potter films to do a bit of research about this building, and of course we went crazy and we found out who was all the occupants on this building since 1729, and the good thing, Namir, that were loads of creative people that were here, lived in this place, like from carpenters to dressmakers to the violinists and so the musicians, and so the energy here, and again I think it's quite nice to bring those kind of energies back to Soho as well, to London, because things are kind of changing so quickly, and lots of the old crafts are changing. And again, Namir, we had an opportunity to work with an amazing sign writer to do all the sign writing for us, and again all those techniques are kind of dying, so we really needed to keep them alive and sharing with you guys as well. That's the good thing about films, Namir, because in films we still have all those amazing craft people working there, and so yes, we go
to them, bookbinders and glass etching, and yes, and the brilliant Sign Co. So definitely look them up. Someone has asked, I think we've got about 5 or 10 minutes left, but someone else, Evan has also asked another interesting question, which I think is significant for going back to talking about the requirements that are placed on a graphic designer for film, compared to, say, an illustrator making his or her mark as an individual designer in a book or an illustrated work. He says, I can see a certain graphic style in MinaLima's works. As a graphic designer for film, can you always bring your own voice and style to different projects? Or do you have to be super versatile and not bound to your style when you work for different films? I have to say, I don't remember ever thinking or noticing that we had a style. So maybe it just kind of happens by osmosis. I'm not sure. I think, to answer the question, you probably should be super versatile and try not to put your style or your mark on things, because after all, you're either trying to recreate history where it doesn't exist anymore, if it's an old newspaper, or
you said, no, in the beginning, it's all about the character, it's all about the character journey. So you need to think about the character, not about how Eduardo or Mira or you would be designing that piece. However, as you said, Mira, like with Harry Potter, we didn't know that we were establishing like a language, not visual language, for the wizarding world with the graphics that we were doing. But again, I think we like to think that we were for a little bit McGonagall, we were a little bit Dumbledore. Snape was not really Mira and Eduardo that designed things. We have to wear the point hats of the wizards and thinking like them.
But do you think that's the same for all applied graphic design? Do you think maybe if you're creating, say, a new whiskey brand or something, that you need to enter into that particular mindset of that brewery, or do you think it's important that a house has its style?
No, it's important for us to have it, but again, it is what like really takes MinaLima is storytelling. No? So it's always about the storytelling. Even if we are designing a whiskey label, you're gonna tell a story, with that label. So it's a combination of our own style, the house style, and the client style as well. No, but ultimately is the story that you want to tell that has to have the higher voice.
Yes, that's true, actually, and I think when you get it wrong, because you start to drift into just thinking what you like as a designer, or if it starts to look like something you did for another character. I must say that's very difficult with handwriting, because I find that if I have to be a character, I still revert back to you know, handwriting is so personal, so it's quite hard to just reshape my hand to try and be a different character. And I'm sure lots of other graphic designers in films, by the way, anyone wanting to be one, that's a good thing to develop, is working with an old-fashioned ink pen like this.
Another advice that I would like to give to people is don't be scared also to go for a work experience, or like a one day, if you have the opportunity, take it, because that is how I started. When I first met Mira, I got a few weeks work experience, and I never left. And so don't be scared. Unknowingly, we need money, we need to get paid, and that sometimes becomes a difficulty. But if you have the opportunity, just go for it, and it can pay off.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You're still here. In fact, Maria Gonzalez did ask that question to us earlier, is what sort of advice to enter graphic design for film? And I know we spoke at the beginning of this talk about how there are not very many opportunities through the educational route, and that at the moment most of them are through doing work experience and internships. And as Eduardo said, it is vital to try and take those, and you can certainly go on the graphicsunion.co.uk, Graphics Union. If I got that wrong, just Google Graphics Union for film to find out which who's working and how long they've been working for, and contact people that way. It's a very strong body that is very supportive of new blood. So
yeah. The Graphics Union was an amazing thing that we, like, some of the lead graphic designers for major films in the UK, we sat down together one day and we said, instead of us fighting against each other for films or for references and for suppliers, shall we just unite ourselves, having this website and having, like, a place that we can share information, we can help each other, we can help people to start in the film in filmmaking, and so it has been a fantastic instrument to help people even to find out about films and how to get into films, because unfortunately, films as well, the roles of the films are not advertised in magazines or websites, so it's still like a quite closed industry. But hopefully this is changing as well, and hopefully will be much more democratic moving forward. But the graphics, it could be like a door for people that are really wanted to learn about films and work in films.
And I think one bit of advice is to just build your own library, even if, as Eduardo said earlier, even if it's books that feel like they might not be relevant to a project. Significantly, I'd say our library probably doesn't have that many books about graphic designers of contemporary, or it's mostly reference material. I can see on my shelf now things like Second World War posters, book plates, rubber stamps, postcards, children's art, miniature books. So I think building a broad spectrum of reference material, whether it's books or taking photographs of your own for surfaces and typography, but don't use the internet to just rely on,
Unfortunately, the internet is not you have to go to libraries, you have to go to museums. Luckily, we are in London, that we are so well served by museums and galleries and places that we can go and spend time, like the Victoria and Albert is a place that we go all the time and spend time, especially on Harry Potter. And but yes, don't rely on the internet, on Google search for images, because you will be impressed when you go to a library and the things that you can find there. And also, another thing, just I think to finish, is lots of young people come to us and ask as well, on which softwares, what should I do? And we always keep saying that, just as Mira showed her pen, just keep using that as much as you can, because the computer is going to be always there, the software, Photoshop, Illustrators. But if you have the opportunity to draw, to paint, to make a mess with your hands, that is so important for your career. No, Mira always have no dirty with ink, no, Mira, because you're always writing letters.
I think I have to go and do one now, actually. I think we've come out of time. I don't know if Zoom is going to chuck us off, so we probably have to wind it up. We're always nervous that we're not going to have anything to say, and then, of course, you can't shut us up. So stay inspired and creative, and don't let anything get in the way of your communications creatively with others, like-minded people. I think it's a fantastic network to keep us all sane or insane, whichever way you look at it, through this difficult time. Even if we can't actually get out and go and see things, we can share ideas and use the time, if you're off work, to actually do those projects that unfortunately we haven't had that luxury during lockdown. We carried on working. So thank you again to the London Expo and for having us. And it's an honour to be considered useful to talk to everyone, and hopefully in person next time. So thanks again, and
enjoy in Wardour. Sorry, Mia?
I said come and see us at House of MinaLima in Wardour Street, because we're there all the time. So.
Yes, and enjoy the sunny weekend, because it might be the last one. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.